Well, hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. And this is going to be part one of our GATO Class Submarine 1941 by AFV Club. And this is going to be in 1/350th scale. So that's a really, really small scale. So we got a few things to do. If you've seen the kit review, you know that we have some parts that look like they've been affected by heat. So well, we're going to kick this off by doing our best to try to straighten that stuff out. So let's go ahead and jump down to the bench and get started on this. All right, so the first thing we need to do is go ahead and find all of these parts that are a little bit warped. So the first one we got is the base, and it has some warpage. So we're going to do what we can to try to straighten this out. So we're going to go ahead and cut this free of the sprue. And the next piece is going to be the our periscopes. They're kind of warped. And then we also have the structural piece here that is really kind of twisted. So we're going to go ahead and take care of that. Or at least try to. As you can see, it is kind of mangled up, but we're going to do what we can to fix that. And here is our radio mast and our periscope, and as you can see, those are those are kind of bent too. So we're going to take care of that little warpage, or we're going to try to. And of course, the next piece, that's our base. And if we ever want it to set flat on a, say, a shelf or something like that, we're going to have to do something about that. So let's work on this. Okay, so I've got a board and some clamps, as you can see there. And we have moved our operation to, well, to the kitchen. So make sure that you talk to the captain of the mess before you do this. Well, we want to keep everybody happy. But here we're just going to boil some water, and then I cut the heat down. I just keep it just at almost boiling point. As you can see, all the bubbles on the bottom of the pot there. And we've dipped our base into it. And what we're going to do is we're going to transfer it as quickly as possible to our little piece of wood here, and we're going to throw some clamps on it there. Trying to let it cool, and hopefully that will straighten it out. So as it's kind of got this little warpage there, so I'm going to put a clamp there too. Just make sure that all the surface there is making contact with our little piece of wood there. And we're going to let that cool, and we'll move on to the next piece. So we've got this little structural part here that is kind of twisted up. It's kind of got these like 6 little spider legs on it there. Now it goes inside the conning tower, and the roof section of the conning tower actually mounts to it. So we're going to do what we can to kind of straighten this out. So I am using a thin pair of pliers and my tweezers here, and we're going to twist that around, and couple of dips in the hot water there. I don't want to use a hair dryer on this because these parts are so thin and small. We would get it too hot and they would probably just curl up, and we don't want that. We try to save it, save as much of it as we can. But this is really, really pliable polystyrene, so that doesn't look too bad. So I think we can work with that piece. Now, next up is those periscopes, and of course, you know, your model's not going to look right if those periscopes are kind of leaning over like they are now. So I want to be really careful here. I just want to heat it up and make it a little bit more pliable than it is already. And like I say, this polystyrene is really, really flexible, and we're just going to take and use our fingers and kind of bend them back into shape. And they do have a constant curve, which is kind of hard to deal with, but we're just going to keep dipping it in and pressing our fingers on it. You do kind of have to bend this more than vertical in the opposite direction there to kind of help straighten them out. So that doesn't look too bad. It looks pretty good. So we're going to stick with that. Now, we did have a little problem with the base. It didn't quite finish or straighten out. It wants to return back. So we got that little bow there. But we're going to fix that. So what I've decided to do is we're going to take a piece of polystyrene here. And this is some of that bulk polystyrene. This is the thickest that I have in a variety pack. And I'm just going to kind of trim it off here. Don't want all that excess there. So if you just score this polystyrene, you can kind of snap it right off. And just as easy as that. So to show you guys what size it is, here we are. This is 0.89 millimeters, which would be 0.9 millimeters. I think it was supposed to be 1 millimeter, but that's what it is. And then in inches, 0.035 of an inch. So that's the polystyrene that I'm using. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to clamp that to our board here, because if you cement something on a curve, it's going to remain on a curve. So I'm just going to clamp these pieces together onto our little flat piece of wood that we have there. Just like that. And then we can just run our Tamiya extra thin around it. So the ideal here is to have this bulk thick piece of polystyrene on the bottom to reinforce it. And by cementing it together here, what we'll end up with is a nice solid piece. Hopefully, with no warpage. And then we'll just go ahead and stick our nameplate into place there. Now, we're not going to glue that into place or anything. We're just going to stick it in there to help hold everything at its right distance and not being twisted. Okay, so with all that done, we can go ahead and move on to step 1. So step 1 tells us that we need to drill a hole, and obviously we need to do this before we start gluing parts together. And this is a locator pin for the actual stand. So we need to go ahead and take care of that. So as you can see here in the bottom of the hull, if I can get the light just right so you can see it, there is a little indentation there where we need to drill that hole. So we need to know what size that's supposed to be. So we're going to take our calipers once again and just kind of see about the size of whatever that pin is. And here we've got a 0.073 of an inch. So the next thing to do is to size us up a drill bit. Now I think this is a number 46. Don't quote me on that. I just went through and I've got one that's the actual same size. So we're going to use this drill bit. So using our Tamiya handy drill, and I really love this drill. It's not too fast, and it's not. It just fits the hand really good, and it works great. So we're just going to chuck up our 0.073 inch drill bit there, and drill the hole in the bottom of the of our boat. Of course, that'll cause you to sink if you're going in the water, but for our purpose, that's fine. Just make sure you don't drill a hole through the side of your finger. Oh, whoops, come close, but need to be more careful there. So I'm going to take my hobby knife here and just clean up that little burr where the drill bit exit out the bottom of the plastic there. We'll just clean that up so we don't have any of that on there. And we'll check our fit. Fits perfect, of course. So we're ready to go. All right, quick look at our instructions here. We have the pressure hull piece here. It's just the top half, and it has 2 caps on it. And then we got a small structure here. I think it's for the deck gun. So we need to go ahead and assemble that. So let's go ahead and put that together. Now, when it comes to these caps that goes on the pressure hull, it does have that half moon slot that just sets right there on the little beveled end of the, well, it's not beveled, it's a rebated end. And the same thing with the aft section, and we'll just put those on and cement those into place. And we do want to make sure that those are vertical to the pressure hull itself. And then we got our little structure to put on. We'll cement that up. And if we go back to our instructions here, you can see that it just sets right down into the lower hull. And then, of course, we got the pieces that go for our deck gun. One goes on top of the upper hull there, and then one on top of that little bracket there. And then we don't want to forget about, we've got a polycap for our rudder, so we want to make sure we put that in there before we seal this thing up. Otherwise, that could be a problem. Okay, so we got our pressure hull, and we have our lower outer hull section. And we just want to make sure that we get that lined up. Now, there is a little bit of shift room there at the aft section, so we're just going to make sure that we're in the middle as best we can get it. Just getting it centered between the tabs there, and a little bit extra thin, and that will secure it for us. And then we'll go forward and cement that in. And I really don't know why they even bothered to put this in here, because you can't even see it. So anyway, we're going to put it in because it's part of the kit. And it does give a little bit of weight, whatever weight we have here on such a small kit, and that might be part of it. So we do have a disc that we need to put on top of that little structure that we put on top of the pressure hull. And it's got that little rectangular key there for it. So we'll just put that into place. Now it does have a hole drilled into the center of it, or cast in the center, or molded into the center of it there. And this is where that deck gun is going to sit. So it's important that we get that pressed down into place, and it's not, crooked or whatever. Next up is our polycap. If we don't put it in now, then we'll just have to cement our rudder in. So we'll go ahead and get that little polycap lined up. And it's not like Tamiya polycaps. This one's actually kind of collapsed a little bit, but that's okay. I mean, it'll squeeze in and take the shape of the recessed hole that it's going to go into. Just want to make sure that it is fully seated before we commit to gluing the upper hull in. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and put this plate. Now, this is the little mounting plate for our deck gun. And it does have a little rectangular slot and peg arrangement there. You just want to make sure that we line that hole up, because that hole goes all the way through the upper deck there. So a little bit of cement there, and then just want to make sure that it's all pressed down nice and tight. Don't want any gaps there. And also, we're going to use our tweezers to make sure that the holes are lined up. It would be a shame if we have to try to drill that later. So we're in good shape there. So with that done, we can go ahead and join our upper hull to our lower hull. Now, of course, always test fit these things before you commit to cement. And I've checked it, and it seems to fit okay. So we are going to put a couple of clamps on here, a little bit of tension, just to make sure that we don't have any gaps once we commit to our cement there. And with that in place, and we're satisfied with our alignment, we'll just go ahead and add a little bit of extra thin to secure our lower hull and our upper hull together. Now, as you can see, this model is also designed where you could do a waterline diorama if you so desire. I'm going to build it up into the full vessel. And now we can remove our clamps once that, to me, extra thin has taken hold. Okay, so we can go back to our stand now and kind of see what we've got going on here. So I think that has kind of solved that little warpage problem in doing the little finger dance there. Check and see if it is flat, and it seems to be in good shape. So no problem. I think that will fix all of that. So now we need to go ahead and trim off all this excess that we have there. So I'm just going to nip that off with our sprue cutters here, kind of get it down where we can actually start to sand it. So the ideal here is just to sand it flush with the base itself. We really don't want to remove any polystyrene from the actual stand. Just take care of that extra polystyrene that we've glued onto it to stiffen it up and kind of straighten everything out. So now would be a good time to go ahead and snap everything together here. I'm going to go ahead and put that nameplate back into our base and double check. Yeah, okay, we're in good shape. It's no longer warped, so that's good. So we're going to put our posts into place here for mounting the submarine. And then, of course, we'll go ahead and put the submarine onto our base. I like to test fit these things just to make sure that we're not going to have any issues. And it seems that everything is going to come out just fine. So, yeah, we're in good shape here. So we did skip ahead doing the base at this point, but that's okay because we did have issues with it. Now we can move on to our next step. Step 2. So we do have these little bitty doors here for our aft torpedo tubes, and then we've got our brackets there for our propeller shafts. Now our propellers, we're going to leave those off for now. Simplified painting. And then, of course, we've got our rear dive planes, our rudder, and then we have these guards here that we're going to put on, and those are photo etch. So we're going to start off by putting the doors on, and this is the aft section. So we have 4 torpedo tubes. Now, if you can see here, these are really, really tiny doors, and they do have a little hinge detail on them, which goes inboard. That's in towards the fuselage there. A little bit of cement, and we're just going to press those into place. So there's 3 more to do, and we'll go ahead and do those. So with that done, we can go ahead and put our propeller shaft bracket into place. And because of the little indentations for it, it fits nicely. We just need to make sure that we've actually got them seated correctly there. And there we go. And I just want to make sure that it's square to the actual fuselage. And a little bit extra cement there, and we're ready to go. So do check and make sure that those are square. That way our propeller shafts will fit. Now there is a left and a right, so don't mix these up. There's a little cutout in the hull with a locator tab, and then it just slides up into a little drilled hole there, or cast hole, or molded hole. A molded hole into the bracket, and it does fit. It fits very well. It practically snaps right into place there. Looks good. And there we are with both of those into place. And they're very much into scale. So I'm really, really enjoying how well this is going together here. So next up, we have our aft dive planes. So we do have a small shaft that we have to place into one side. A little bit of to me extra thin there. And I want to make sure that that's fully seated. And then we have this little cap that actually goes on over top of it, if I can pick it up. And we just a little bit of extra thin there and just set it into place. And it kind of sandwiches that shaft for us. And then all we got to do is slide it through the hole in the aft section of the lower fuselage there. A fuselage, lower hull. I think I'm building an airplane. And it is adjustable. Now, when it comes to the other side, I'm just going to go ahead and put the little half piece there into place. Drop a little bit of to me extra thin on it there. And we will slide that onto that shaft that went through the lower hull. Just like so. And if I've done this correctly, it's still movable, so it is positionable, although we're not going to need that positioning because it is kind of a static display. Next up is our rudder, and that slides up into that polycap that we put into place there earlier when we put our hull halves together. So there we go, and voila. Voila, it's all together. So we have some small deck features to put on. Now this is our aft torpedo room loading hatch for our torpedoes, and just kind of get it down in there. The hinge portion of it goes down into the hull, and then we just place it down. And next up, we have a, I don't know what you call this thing. It's not called a bit. This is what you would wrap your shoreline or whatever around. But this is a really, really small part. So the important thing here is we don't lose it. And we actually get it cemented into the hole that it's supposed to go into. And make sure that it's fully seated. So, yeah, I probably should have left the little sprue gate on it so I could hold on to it better, but there we go. And next up, we have a, I forget what these are called. I'm not really good with my vessel attachments. So, this is the part that you put lines through. Anyway, I did try to seat it backwards, so I had to switch it around a little bit here, and now I just need to get it down into the slot there, and once it's fully seated, we're good to go there. So we have some other tie down points here for the vessel, and you're going to have various cleats and what have you along the side of the hull, and as you can see there, a little bit of, to me, extra thin. And then we can just place those in. Now, these parts are really small, and the important thing to remember here is do not squeeze your tweezers too tightly, because these little parts can kind of shoot out, and you lose them, and then they become something for the carpet monster, which we don't want. And then we have a small staff to go on the aft of the vessel. So next up, we need to do some photo etch. And I know some of you guys hate photo etch, some of you guys love photo etch, and some of you guys are new and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing with photo etch. But that's okay. We'll just talk through it here. I am using a piece of glass to cut my photo etch off of my sprue. Well, not sprue. I think it's called a fret. And as you can see here, the way it's etched out, I can take my curved craft knife here and slide it up to the point where we need to actually snap it off, and just press down against the glass, and it's really thin at that point right there where we need to trim it off. So that's what we're doing here, and by doing it this way, we have very little that we have to trim up. And of course, as delicate and small as these pieces are, you really want to get a nice clean cut, because trying to sand this off is really difficult. So by sliding our blade over, we can really just get those cut off. Now I've already folded one for one side. This is the right side. And as you can see, there is a space between those, and all I did was measure their contact points on the hull. Two of them are at 2 millimeters, and then the very aft one, after you get it folded there, is at 1 millimeter spread. So we're going to go ahead and fold one of them here. I did that first one just to make sure that I knew what I was doing. Not that I know what I'm doing, but I'm just using, these are the Tamiya photo etch bending pliers that I'm using here to get that first bend. And there we go. And now we just need to kind of pinch it together. So we're going to go ahead and pinch it together here. So you can see we've got a spread of those, call them, they're not really spars, but we'll call them braces or brackets. Well, they're not brackets either. So these legs on these guards here, and these are to protect our propellers. So I am kind of trying to get the measurement here. And you can just measure out the distance that they are on the actual model, because they got these little slots that it goes into. We'll see that in a minute. But the very aft one, it's only 1 millimeter distance from the one above it, whereas the other two is 2 millimeters. So we need to do a little tweaking there to actually get that distance. And it's best to get that bent really into shape, because it's really hard to try to get it to line up unless you've got it bent correctly. So spend a little time with that. Next up, we're going to use medium contact, well, not contact, but medium CA glue, which is super glue. And we're just going to put that in the little slots that are already molded in to accept the PE. So we're only doing those 3 bottom legs of the photo etch that we bent. It's easier to just go ahead and do those on the bottom first, and then later on we will press down and cement the however many it is, 5 or whatever, across the top. So AFV Club has done a really good job of making sure that we have some really good location points to put this photo etch. So by putting the bottom ones in first, we are in really good shape here to be able to do the top section. And using medium CA glue, we have just a little bit of time, about 15-20 seconds, while it's still pliable. So we need to start doing the top legs of this guard before that actually sets up. And I'm only doing one at a time. Once you get the first one in, you've got your angle, so you don't have to worry about your alignment. You just need to make sure that you get each one pressed into place, and we just do one at a time. As you can see there. So I guess this is an okay way to do this. I don't know of any other way that I could have thought of to actually make this PE come out. So there we are. That guard is in place, and that actually protects the prop and, of course, our dive planes. And here we are with the other one put on. And the second one actually went better than the first, so sometimes you get lucky. Now our aft dive planes here, they're kind of loose, so I'll probably just cement those into place there. So let's go on back to our instructions here. So we are through step 3, on to step 4. And we have a lot of little attachments. We also need to assemble our deck gun. And we do have the forward section of our deck to put on, so we'll need to do that. Probably do that first. And then, of course, our bow dive planes, we need to do those as well. So let's do this front deck section first. So it seems that the fit's okay here, no real issue there. And then, of course, we'll just use a little bit of Tamiya extra thin to go ahead and secure it into place. Now, once our bow deck section is installed, you can see we do have a bit of a gap there, right around that hole in the end of the sub. That's where the lead line or tow line can come out on the sub. So we're going to have to take care of that, and we're just going to use perfect plastic putty to do that, the PPP. And I'm just going to apply that right around that seam area there. And it's really important to make sure that we let this dry completely. And it is water-based, so it's not a great big issue. And then we do have these kind of transition areas here that we're going to have to blend in. So we're going to go ahead and put a little bit of extra putty there. So when it comes time to clean this up after it's completely dried, I'm not going to use a wet Q-tip to do this. We're just going to sand this down. That way the wet Q-tip's not pulling any of that material out. We get a kind of a flush seam there. So while we're waiting for our perfect plastic putty to dry, we need to go ahead and assemble our deck gun. And it does have a small sight that needs to go on top. And it's just a simple square key and square hole, more or less, or a notch. It's more like a notch that it needs to line up on. And just want to make sure that it's nice and level before we leave it to dry. And I will say that AFV Club did a really good job on the detail on this gun for the size of it. It's really, really excellent detail there. So now we have this, it kind of looks like a tank, but it's part of the pressure hull for the conning tower. And we just need to cement it together. Two pieces that are pretty much identical. They're they're symmetrical to one another. Does that make sense? So anyway, we'll cement that together. And with that done, there's no reason why we can't go ahead and install it. So there is no notch or anything that tells us when we're seated. So I just push it down until it hits the pressure hull. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then all we got to do is secure it with a little bit of extra thin there. We don't want it to fall out. Next up, we've got some cleats to install along the edge of our deck here. As you can see, these are really, really teeny tiny pieces. So I put a little bit of extra thin in the slot where it goes. And then we're going to just carefully not squeeze our tweezers too tight. Otherwise, this little part will go zinging off into the other world of modeling dysfunction. So we don't want to do that. They didn't give us any extra ones. And we'll just continue with our deck fittings. Now, this one is kind of a slotted cleat. I don't know what that's what that's about. I don't know the real name of them. So we're just going to go put them on. I couldn't find any reference for them in my short search there. But we do want to be very careful that we don't lose them. They don't give us any extras. And then next up, we have this little round piece that I left the sprue gate on so that I could hold on to it. I didn't do that on the rear section of the deck, but I believe it's called a bollard. And we'll just trim off that sprue gate once it dries. And then, of course, we got our anchor to install. And, of course, we have this really short, I don't know if it's a mast of some kind, but you want to make sure that when you put this on, you don't get it backwards. The 45-degree leg leans forward towards the bow of the vessel and not towards the rear. And then we'll just go ahead and attach whatever else that we've got here. This is, Maybe a sonar antenna. I'm not really sure. Uh, but I am going to make sure that it is not leaning, because that would be bad. And then we have a kind of a T mast of some kind here that goes towards the aft section of the sub, or just beyond midships there. Now, I'm going to use this thick Tamiya cement when it comes to putting on our dive planes. And the reason why is because they actually fit kind of loose. And the Tamiya thick cement will fill that gap and help hold our dive planes into place. We don't want those moving around on us before they actually dry. So I'm just going to use a toothpick to put that cement into place, and I did get a little bit too much there. We need to get that off there. There we go. And then we'll just place those in their location and come and straighten them up. There is no real positive locator pin or slot or anything for these. They just sit on that little protrusion there on the upper hull. So you're going to have to eyeball that and get that lined up. So we do have these little struts here for our bow dive planes, and they are photo etch, and they are very small. And since they're photo etch, we're going to use CA glue to put them on, and you can see how small they are there. So try not to lose these, or at least I'm giving it my best shot. And I'm just going to dip the ends of them into the CA glue, and then carefully place them into position there, right at their connection point on the dive plane, and then that lower hole right there in the upper hull. Wow, too many holes there. All right, so that's step 4. Moving on to step 5. We've got that squiggly piece that we tried to straighten out with all the legs on it. And there's a center section that needs to go in it, and then there's a top plate that goes on it, which is actually the top plate of the conning tower. So we need to make sure that all of this is going to go on, and I hope it goes on well. We also have a deck gun. Well, not a deck gun, it's an anti-aircraft gun that we need to put on. And then we can sandwich this stuff together. And then a little bit of PE and some railings in the front section. And then that's, I don't know what it's called, splash diverter or whatever it is. So this was the best I could do with the hot water treatment there. And you can see that they're kind of flexible. Well, not kind of, they really are flexible. So we shouldn't have any problem there. But we do have some ejector pins there that are extended down below. And that's going to be a problem for us. So we need to file those down. And I'm just using my little trusty file here with the serrated edge there to clean that up so that the centerpiece that we need to put in the middle will seat firmly against it and not being held off. Because that will screw up our alignment, and we don't want that. Now we need to attach this assembly to the, I believe it's called the weather bridge, and you can see those little legs on our little spider piece there. They kind of slot into the sides of this, so we just need to push it down, and it doesn't really give us an issue, and there it is. So yeah. I think it's going to work. Now, right on the back side of this, there is a ladder, and this is not photo etch. This is actually polystyrene, very small. And we just need to cement that into place. And once we get that done, we can go ahead and move on to the top of that little structure. And this is the top of our conning tower. And it is going to go. Now, what goes right on top of that is going to be our periscope and our radio mast. But we're going to leave that off for now. So that's kind of what that assembly looks like. Now, as you can see, where those little pins kind of protrude down, we actually need to take care of that because that's going to affect how it sets on the little ledge inside the conning tower or the sail structure. And we don't want anything to hold us off. We want everything to seat nicely, so we're going to go ahead and sand that down. And with that done, we're going to go ahead and seat that weather deck right there on that little ledge inside the superstructure or conning tower or sail, whatever you, what, I don't know, maybe all three terms is correct. I don't know. Somebody straighten me out on that. I'm not really a sub guy, but I guess I'm going to have to learn how to be a sub guy. And it simply sandwiches in right there. And once we are happy with the alignment, and I am really surprised that the top section on that internal structure actually fits correctly, so maybe we did something right. So we just need to go ahead and cement this up all the way around, and making sure that we've got plenty of contact area there. Nice. So now we can move on to the front section here, and it just simply sits on over top of that semicircle bulge on the front of it there. And I just want to make sure that we line up that handrail that goes around towards the bottom section there, and we'll cement that together. So we do have some gaps to fill, so we're going back to the PPP, perfect plastic putty, which is water soluble, and we're just going to fill that seam and that little bitty gap from that front section to the main body of this structure here. So also it's kind of a little seam here that goes down the sides, which I don't particularly like, so I'm just going to go ahead and fill that. And then once this completely dries, again, we're not going to use the Q-tip method on these parts because this is very, very little of the perfect plastic putty that's going to be left, and we don't want to wash it out. So by letting it completely dry, and we just sand it down nice and smooth like you would any other putty, we can get a good finish here, or at least I hope we get a good finish on these seams. Now with that done, we have this deflector to put on, and it has these little bitty gussets on the bottom. So, and that is the bottom, that's not the top. So we need to make sure that that goes down when we install it. And it simply just fits right along that ledge there where the open bridge is, or weather bridge. And just a little bit, it's me extra thin to help get it into place there. And you don't need much more than that. And just make sure everything's lined up. So at this point, this is kind of what it's supposed to look like. At least I think it's what it's supposed to look like, so I think we're in good shape there. So we actually have some railings to go on, and we have kind of skipped a little bit ahead in the sequence here. We have not installed the periscope with the radio mast and that stuff on it because that will kind of get in the way of us making sure that we got a good alignment here on our railing. And I do want to make sure that these are square to the side of this structure and even and not tilted in or tilted out because these railings just they're basically straight up. So not basically, but they are straight up. So we just want to make sure that they look symmetrical to one another. I'm using that word again, and I hope I'm using it right. So we do have a small problem that I've discovered here on our anti-aircraft gun here. The pedestal is not on our gun. I don't know if it's a part that should have been molded separately, or maybe they intended to and they just didn't. But it's not in the kit, and it's not molded with the gun. And as you can see here, there's no pedestal. So if I can get it into focus, there we go. But the gun is nicely detailed. Well, that's a good thing. So maybe it was a short shot in the molding process. I don't know. So we do have that little spur on the bottom that we'll just get rid of when we go to attach it. So let's go ahead and make a pedestal for this. So since this pedestal is so small, what we're going to do is we're just going to stretch some sprue. And I'm just doing that by taking a piece of sprue here and heating it up over an open flame, and we're just going to stretch it out a little bit. The part that we're looking for is kind of the tapered end where we've stretched the sprue there. Now it's not going to have the little ring around the bottom like in the instructions, but that's okay. We can make do with that. And I just simply cut it off, and then we'll just put a little bit of to me extra thin right where it goes. You just want to make sure that the base of this thing is larger than the locator hole that's there for the original pedestal. And I have left it a little long, and I'm not worried about the little curved piece that's up above the sides there, so we're going to trim that off. But leaving it a little bit long makes it easier to actually get it lined up and get it vertical like it's supposed to be. And so we do have that little bitty post on the bottom there. We're just going to snap that off using our flush cut sprue cutters. Now I'm going to let that pedestal dry a little bit, so in the meantime we can go ahead and put our deck gun on, I think. The deck gun was the same color as the vessel, so that's not a real issue there, and we'll be able to paint that all up together. And the deck gun looks really good. So I think our pedestal has dried enough for us, so we're just going to flush cut it right even with the deck there. Well, not the deck, but the side walls, I guess. Now, on some of these submarines, they didn't have those kind of side walls. Some of the submarines in this class had railings that went around right there. But in this particular case, must be probably an early version, I think, maybe. But at any rate, we just need to make sure that our anti-aircraft gun is elevated enough that it clears the sides there. And with it placed right on top of our pedestal, just check our alignment, and it looks pretty good. Okay, so let's move on. Now that we've got this all together, and that's kind of how the gun should look. It should be elevated above the sides there. Just want to make sure that it's straight before we continue on. So we do have this small post here that has a ring on the top of it. I don't know if that's like an AM or FM direction finder or surface radar. Don't know, but we'll just put that on. And then we'll go ahead and put our periscope and our antenna mast into place. So we kind of saved this for last because we had all that little work to do. And if we had put that on, we probably would have bent or broke something or got something misaligned. So we just want to make sure that we get that lined up so that it looks right. And I think it looks pretty good. Okay. So we do have a little piece of PE that we need to put on. It's kind of a U-shaped item here. And maybe it's a direction finder or something. I really don't know, so I'm not going to speculate any more than that. We're just going to install it according to the instructions. So a little CA glue there to kind of hold it into place. And since we are using medium CA glue, we got a few seconds there to get it lined up. So yeah, that's come together. Not a bad thing. Next thing up is going to be these handrails, and these are photo etch, and they are very, very fine, very, very thin. So you got to be really careful not to bend these when you cut them loose from the fret. And then we have these little locators, and they're little bitty slots that go down each side of the submarine there. And that's where this PE piece has to sit. And as you can see there, they're really small, but they seem to match up. So we're going to use our medium CA glue again here to attach these metal parts. So the method of installing these handrails that I have chosen to do is to put just a little bitty dab of CA glue right on those slots there, and wherever we have the vertical posts on our handrails really close together, I'm just going to put the CA glue in that small string. So we've got 4 or 5 there, and we're just going to go ahead and seat our handrail into place. Now, as long as you don't bend up your handrail, you're not going to have an issue here. They will line up more or less. So just need to make sure that they're fit, nice and snug down in those slots. And then the method I use is to go on down along the handrail there and just glue the posts in, 5 or 6 at a time. And they do fit. They pretty much go exactly where you expect them to. However, if you can tell, there is some slight bowing there. So I kind of think that when they did this photo etch, it didn't really conform to the curve of the deck. So, but I mean, I think it looks all right. So it'll be all right. Next up, we're going to set it on the stand there. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to go ahead and align the stand to the boat. We haven't glued those uprights, those posts for the stand. So now's a good time to go ahead and do that, because I'm going to paint that the same color as the rest of the stand. So we'll get that taken care of. Well, okay. Sorry for the video being so long, but I really didn't want to break that up into too many little bitty pieces, It's a small boat. So this is where we're at. Now, I will point out that the base is not glued to the hull, and also our nameplate here that says USN GATO Class 1941. We haven't glued that to the base either, because that's just going to make it easier to do the highlighting the lettering. So it should make things a little bit easier for ourselves as much as we can. And we don't have our propellers on. That's done so that it'll be easier for painting as well. And also the superstructure here, or the sail on our sub, it's not affixed either. It's just sitting there. So that'll be easier for us to paint and do our little highlights and stuff. So well, that's the plan anyway. But I think it's come out pretty good. Now, I'm not real happy with the railing there. It does it looks a little wavy across the top, but all in all, fairly well-fitting sub model kit there. And also, and we haven't seen these yet, to show these to you. These are torpedoes. So there are 7 of these that are included with the kit. And as you can see, they are quite small. But there are 7 of those. I don't know what you would use them for, but they're in the kit, just in case. So we may paint those up or do something with those, which will be in the next video. Next video, we're going to do all of our painting and weathering and finish this off, so you don't want to miss that. So special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you're new to the channel and not a subscriber, I hope today that I earned your subscription. So until next Friday, I hope you guys stay safe, and I'll see you then.